Brian is my friend, a good friend, and he's someone I would go to war with anytime. I'd be in the foxhole, and you want a foxhole mentality, Brian Burke's the guy you want in the foxhole next to you.
I go back, I don't know, 30 years with Ron Wilson. He's an excellent coach, and I see them as a very dangerous team. People talk about you as a guy that would be a good fit or a guy that they should go after. It's flattering professionally for not have the speculation, but I think it's flattering when your name comes up for a job because I was out of work for a year, and that memory is not distant.
The crowd has gathered here at the main concourse at the Air Canada Centre, as in just a few moments, that gentleman right there that you saw, Brian Burke, will be announced as the new president and general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Welcome to the Leafs Nation headquarters studios right here at ACC. Andy Petrillo, Paul Hendrick with you. And Brian Burke, this is his fourth NHL team now, and he becomes the 13th general manager in Toronto Maple Leafs history. Given the history of this team, given what they've gone through in the last 5 years, why is this announcement so significant?
Well, I think when you look at the overall history of this franchise, Andy, and you don't even have to go back 5 years, let's go back through the entire length of this franchise. How significant is today's hiring? Well, you'd have to think in terms of autonomy, only Conn Smythe, who founded this team, and Punch Imlach have had as much power as Brian Burke will have. And you might think that Pat Quinn perhaps had some power as coach and general manager. Yes, he did, but not as much as Brian Burke. And when you've not won a Stanley Cup dating back to 1967, 41 years, they want to get this ship righted, and thus the change of power to Brian Burke.
Well, and it's not too long ago that Brian Burke was hoisting up that Stanley Cup, and we've heard a lot about what he's done, little tidbits here and there. But let's take a look exactly at what he's done and why is he a good fit for this?
Well, he's coming into a hockey hotbed, and he wants it this way, and changes have to be made. They've got to rewrite and readdress the entire foundation as to how things are going. Things are different from the Pat Quinn era when you can bring on a player perhaps to get you over the edge. Owen Nolan was that type of player, and they had to trade Brad Boyce to do it. It didn't work. In the cap era, Andy, you've got to build from your farm system, you've got to draft well, you've got to stock your American Hockey League team, and you've got to make moves in terms of development. They can start that now with Luke Schenn and give Cliff Fletcher full credit and Dave Morrison and his scouting staff for this one. But now he comes in. He's not afraid to pull the plug in terms of trading players, maybe buying out. We'll see how things go, but there's a lot of hockey to be played, but he's going to come in. He's had a chance to look at the situation from afar. It is going to be a very interesting next few months, especially as we approach the February trading deadline, or March 4th, come the end of February, as to what will happen. But there are assets on this team, and as to where they may end up will dictate where this hockey team ends up. But he's here for 6 years, and it's not all going to be done overnight, but there will be changes, and they'll be subtle to begin with, I think.
Well, when a new general manager comes on board, the first change everyone always anticipates is, will the head coach be gone? Will he bring in his own head coach? But how important is it then to not underestimate the relationship between Brian Burke and Ron Wilson?
Well, Ron's already gone on record to say that the big guy's his boss. Yeah. Brian Burke is his boss. He knows his place in the food chain. However, they are best of friends. They met 35 years ago when both were playing for the Providence College Friars. Both were co-captains under the guidance of head coach Lou Lamoriello back then. These are two guys brash in terms of what they bring together in wit, hockey knowledge, passion for the game. They're kindred spirits, and I think this is a very unique association between coach and general manager, not seen anywhere else in the National Hockey League, and I think for that reason it makes it very special here in Toronto.
So when you see head coach Ron Wilson having the 4-year deal, Brian Burke, it will be announced 6-year deal, then is MLSE then giving them the chance to really put this team together and understanding that it will not happen overnight?
No, and give MLSE credit finally for knowing that something has to be done. It's been 41 years, as mentioned, and as a result they realize they've got two very qualified people. And you look back over the decades, and I'm not sure whether they've had the opportunity to always get the right coach and general manager in place, the ones they always wanted. Well, they've done so in Ron Wilson, and now they've done so in Brian Burke. And yes, you've got to give them the keys to the car and let them drive. And past indication in terms of success has shown they're going to be capable to get the job done. No, Ron Wilson has not won a Stanley Cup as of yet. He has come close. Brian Burke has won in terms of what he did 2 seasons ago in Anaheim, but at least he has won a Stanley Cup. They're astute hockey men. They're both in their early 50s, and the future is indeed bright with this dynamic duo.
So now coming ahead, let's jump maybe to the summer already. When you look at the draft and just Brian Burke's impact in the draft, and this is the kind of guy, I mean, the Leafs already had a guy by the name of Cliff Fletcher who did a very good job, traded up. Thus, we end up having Luke Shen. So now when a guy like Brian Burke comes on board, how much work does he do into studying these players? And this is the guy you also want to go to the draft with and picking the right players.
Well, you rely on your amateur scouts, obviously, who are scouring the globe in terms of finding the right talent. Dave Morrison and his crew, I thought last season, did a terrific job. They knew from day one that they wanted Luke Shen, and Luke hasn't disappointed. It's a bit of a crapshoot as well. Let's be honest. You can scout, and things aren't going to fall into place, but you put your best people forward, you rely on their knowledge to get the job done right, and hopefully it's going to pay off. But there are 30 teams in the National Hockey League. They're all looking at the same thing, and only one of these teams can win a Stanley Cup. But the Leafs are going to start building from within. It has started with Luke Shen, and their plan is to put future pieces of that puzzle, starting with the draft in Montreal, and their fingers are crossed that they are indeed going to pick a player or two that will have a major hope of helping this franchise turn the corner within the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, if you look at his history here in the draft so far, the big names and the names that continue to make a splash in the NHL, you've got to think he's got a pretty good track record already. And I know you mentioned changes you think will probably be subtle when he comes on board. But do you think changes will be made right away, or do you think he waits until the new year?
Well, it's hard to say whether it will be a new year, but there will be changes, let's be honest. But he has got a good crew in place right here as of now. Cliff Fletcher did a tremendous job taking over in late January, bringing on the likes of Cliff and obviously Joe Nieuwendyk. Jeff Jackson is here. The pieces are already here, and I don't think anything is going to be drastically done in terms of the front office as to how this team is moving forward. The pieces are there already.
Well, I know Mr. Tannenbaum has just taken a seat over there, so we're just waiting Brian Burke to make his entrance onto the stage. And given that, then, let's talk a little bit about, well, never mind. He's going to address the media himself and find out what it's all about. Here is the new general manager and president of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for attending today's special announcement here at Air Canada Centre. We are joined by, on your far left, Gord Kirk, Richard Petty, the President and CEO of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, and Brian Burke. The format today will be as follows. We'll have remarks from Richard and Brian, and then we'll open it up to questions from the floor. I would ask that you please wait for the wireless microphones before posing your questions. Following that, we will have a chance for informal media interviews behind this stage here. With that, I would like to now call upon Richard Petty to make today's announcement.
Thank you, Pat. Almost 1 year ago, the Toronto Maple Leafs began the search for their 13th general manager. At the time, we established some very clear criteria to select the right individual for the job. We wanted a long-term builder on and off the ice with an established track record of success. An experienced hockey executive who has extensive knowledge in identifying talent at all hockey levels. A person who works effectively with the media and is comfortable with the intense scrutiny that characterizes the Canadian hockey market. A top hockey person who could fulfill the position of both president and general manager. And importantly, a winner. With that, I am very pleased to welcome Brian Burke as the president and general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. As all hockey fans know, Brian comes with a stellar track record. He is indeed a winner. Brian has had success at both the team executive and NHL executive level, and is spending time with the NHL at senior capacity, the Hartford Whalers, Vancouver Canucks, and more recently the Anaheim Ducks, where he led the team to its very first Stanley Cup championship. His experience as an attorney representing NHL players and as a professional hockey player nicely rounds out his resume. As president and general manager, Brian will be that long-term builder, ensuring the Maple Leafs will be a consistently competitive and winning team for years to come. He will be charged with the task of leading the Leafs to their 14th Stanley Cup. But before